The first instructor collapsed at exactly 1 minute and 12 seconds. The second made it to 2 minutes before his knees buckled. The third never even reached the halfway marker. And the galaxy was watching. Inside the Coalition's grand military arena, silence spread like a living thing. The stands were filled with officers, diplomats, and war scholars from a dozen advanced civilizations. These were not cadets failing basic drills. These were the trainers of empires, decorated veterans, genetic elites, the beings responsible for forging the strongest soldiers in known space. And one by one, they were hitting the floor. Above the arena, a massive holoscreen displayed the verdict in cold white letters. Disqualified. The Vrall Warmaster, towering, broad-shouldered, engineered for high-gravity combat, slammed his fist into the reinforced flooring as the system shut down. "This course is flawed," he growled. The arena AI responded immediately, voice calm and synthetic. "All parameters fall within universal military tolerances." A ripple of murmurs spread across the observation deck. Because this wasn't a random training failure. This was a demonstration, and the course designer was listed clearly beneath the results. Designer. Human. That single word shifted the atmosphere. Humans. The Coalition's newest military partner. Biologically average. No natural armor. No plasma-adapted lungs. No redundant organs. No claws. No venom. No engineered bone density. Just a death-world species with an inconvenient reputation for surviving things they shouldn't. A Thren strategist leaned forward. "Surely this is a calibration error." A Coalition analyst shook her head. The course was built to the designer's specifications. "And this designer," the strategist pressed, "is one human?" "Yes." At the center of the arena stood the obstacle course itself, deceptively simple. No visible weapons. No active drones. No towering war machines. Just a long, matte-black corridor stretching into shadow. The instructors had entered confidently. They had not emerged the same way. A side door opened. Bootsteps echoed across the chamber. Slow, unhurried. Every camera pivoted. The human didn't look impressive. Medium height. Lean build. Dark training uniform with no visible insignia. No medals. No armor. No enhancement exosuit. He walked to the starting line and studied the 5 instructors still catching their breath. There was no smirk. No arrogance. Just quiet assessment. The Vrall Warmaster rose to his full height and stared down at him. "You designed this?" The human nodded once. "Yes." "You expect soldiers to pass this?" "I expect soldiers to adapt." The holoscreen flickered back to life. "Course ready." The arena lights dimmed slightly. Tension thickened. The human rolled his shoulders once, as if preparing for a light jog. A junior cadet in the stands whispered, barely audible, "If the trainers couldn't pass, what chance does he have?" The human stepped forward to the starting line. He didn't look at the crowd. He didn't look at the instructors. He simply said, calm and clear, "Would you like me to demonstrate?" And the galaxy stopped breathing. The countdown began without fanfare. 3. The arena sealed. 2. The instructors stepped back from the starting line. 1. The corridor floor hummed. The human took his first step. At first, nothing appeared to change. Then the pressure hit. It wasn't visible, but every being in the arena felt the shift in atmosphere as the system engaged. Gravity increased to 3.5 standard. Several diplomats instinctively gripped their seats. That was the point where the first instructor had stumbled. The human kept walking, not sprinting, not bracing dramatically, walking. His boots struck the floor with deliberate rhythm. Shoulders steady, eyes forward. Internal monitors projected his vitals onto the holoscreen. Heart rate, elevated but controlled. Muscle strain, increasing. Skeletal load, within tolerance. The Vral War Master narrowed his eyes. At this gravity, joint compression should destabilize him. A coalition biomechanist replied quietly, "Earth's gravity is already higher than galactic norm. Their musculoskeletal density is inconvenient." The gravity increased again. 4.0. A collective murmur spread across the stands. This was beyond standard military training thresholds. The human slowed slightly. Not from weakness. Adjustment. He leaned forward a few degrees, altering his center of mass. His steps shortened. His breathing deepened. Slow inhale through the nose, controlled exhale through parted lips. Every movement efficient. No wasted motion. At 50 meters, the corridor floor subtly shifted to uneven terrain. Under 4.0 gravity. The second instructor had collapsed here. Femur fracture. The human's boot slipped once on a raised ridge. His knee dipped. Gasps erupted. But he didn't fall. He planted his hand briefly against the floor, redistributed weight, and continued forward as if it had been expected. Because it had. The holoscreen updated. 100 meters reached. The gravity spiked again. 4.5. A coalition officer stood abruptly. That exceeds safe adaptive tolerance. The arena AI responded flatly. Designer parameters confirmed. The human's jaw tightened. For the first time, strain showed in his posture. Muscles along his neck stood out sharply. Sweat darkened the collar of his uniform. But he did not stop. The instructors watched in silence now. No mockery. No scoffing. Only calculation. At 150 meters, micro-tremors began in his quadriceps. The camera zoomed in. He shifted his gait again, shorter steps, rolling foot placement to reduce impact stress. A Thren analyst whispered, stunned. "He's not overpowering the gravity." Another finished the thought. "He's negotiating with it." At 200 meters, the system chimed. Gravity normalized instantly. The sudden lightness nearly caused him to stumble, but he compensated smoothly, adjusting within half a step. He didn't collapse, didn't kneel, didn't celebrate. He simply stopped at the checkpoint and looked up at the observation deck. Breathing heavy, eyes steady. The Vral War Master felt something unfamiliar stir in his chest. Not anger, respect. The human spoke, voice amplified evenly across the arena. Gravity doesn't care how strong you are. A pause. It only cares how well you adapt. Behind him, the corridor lights flickered. Stage 2 was initializing. And this time, no one was whispering. The corridor did not give him time to recover. The moment gravity stabilized, the walls shifted. Panels along the matte black surface slid open with mechanical precision. A warning flashed across the holoscreen. Environmental extremes initiating. The temperature dropped instantly. Not gradually. Instantly. Frost crystallized along the corridor floor in a spreading wave. Vapor burst from the human's mouth as the air plunged below, freezing in seconds. Several delegates recoiled. That rate of change is biologically destabilizing. The human inhaled sharply, a reflex. His shoulders tightened as the cold slammed into him. Muscles that had just endured crushing gravity now stiffened under thermal shock. But he didn't retreat. He reached up calmly and removed his outer jacket. Gasps rippled through the stands. He's increasing surface exposure. A coalition medic leaned toward her console. He's preventing moisture lock-in. If sweat freezes against fabric, it accelerates hypothermia. The human flexed his fingers once, then continued forward. The wind began next, artificial, violent, howling down the corridor like a planetary storm. Ice particles blasted against his skin. His pace slowed, not from fear, from calculation. Every step deliberate, breathing controlled. Short inhalations, measured exhalations, minimizing heat loss. The Vral Warmaster stared at the vitals. Core temperature, dropping, but stable. Pain indicators, spiking. Yet stress hormone output remained surprisingly controlled. He should be panicking, one instructor muttered. The biomechanist responded softly. Humans don't always interpret pain as a stop signal. At 50 meters, the temperature spiked without warning. The frost evaporated in a burst of steam. The corridor transformed into an oven. Heat surged past desert thresholds within seconds. The floor radiated upward. The air shimmered. The human staggered half a step. His lungs struggled briefly as the air scorched. Sweat that had formed during the cold now evaporated instantly, leaving his skin dry and flushed. Blister risk. Respiratory shock risk. Dehydration risk. He closed his eyes for half a second while walking. Just half. When they opened again, his breathing had shifted. Longer inhale. Slower release. His heart rate dropped by 4 beats per minute. A Thren diplomat whispered in disbelief. He's regulating himself mid-exposure. He's trained for it, another replied. The instructors remembered their own attempts. They had fought the cold, fought the heat, fought the discomfort, and they had lost. The human was not fighting. He was adapting. At 70 meters, the heat intensified again. The corridor lights turned a deep, oppressive red. Pain signals surged across the medical display. Still, his stride never broke. At 90 meters, skin along his forearms reddened visibly. A cadet in the stands whispered, shaken. Why doesn't he stop? The human reached the checkpoint. The system chimed. Temperature normalized. Cool, neutral air flooded the corridor. Steam rose faintly from his skin. He stopped, not collapsing, not kneeling, simply standing. Breathing steady. Shoulders rising and falling in disciplined rhythm. He looked up toward the observation deck. Voice amplified, calm despite everything. Pain, he said evenly, is information. Silence gripped the arena. It tells you what's happening, he continued. It doesn't decide what you do next. The instructors no longer looked skeptical. They looked unsettled. Behind him, the corridor lights dimmed. No environmental alerts appeared this time. No warnings. Just darkness gathering at the far end of the path. Stage 3 was beginning, and none of them had reached it before. There were no alarms this time. No gravity shift. No thermal warning. The corridor lights simply went out. Total darkness swallowed the arena. Even the observation deck screens cut to black. A sharp intake of breath echoed from somewhere in the stands. "What is this stage?" a delegate demanded. The arena AI responded calmly. "Sensory deprivation protocol engaged." The instructors stiffened. They knew this one. This was where they had failed. Not because it hurt. Not because it crushed bone or burned flesh. But because it stripped everything away. Inside the corridor, the human disappeared into perfect blackness. No light. No sound. No temperature variance. Even the floor vibrations ceased. The arena had been engineered to eliminate sensory reference. No echoes, no airflow, no electromagnetic fluctuations detectable by most species. It was as close to nothing as technology could create. On the observation deck, only one display remained active: biometric telemetry. Heart rate, elevated from the prior stages, but stabilizing. Respiration, slowing. Cortisol levels, decreasing. The Vral War Master frowned. "That's impossible. Isolation triggers stress response." A coalition neuroscientist leaned forward, fascinated. "Not if the subject anticipates it." Inside the darkness, the human stopped walking. He stood still for several seconds. Then, deliberately, he lowered himself to the floor, sat cross-legged, spine straight, hands resting lightly on his knees. The biometric display shifted. Heart rate dropped further. Brainwave scans showed something unusual, synchronized rhythmic patterns. "He's entering controlled cognitive cycling," the neuroscientist whispered. "Explain." "He's not fighting the deprivation. He's occupying it." Minutes passed. 5, 10, 15. For the instructors, the longest any of them had endured was 7 minutes before disorientation set in. Without sensory anchors, their instincts had rebelled. Hallucinations began. Panic followed. But the human's telemetry remained steady. At 20 minutes, his breathing became so slow the medical monitors recalibrated. A cadet whispered nervously, "Is he unconscious?" "No," the neuroscientist said softly. "He's focused." Inside the void, the human did not move. He had trained for this. Long-duration space travel simulations. Submarine deployments beneath Earth's oceans. Arctic survival drills. Solitary endurance conditioning. Humans had a long history with isolation, and surviving it. At 30 minutes, a subtle tremor passed through one of the instructors watching from the deck. The realization was settling in. This wasn't a physical test. It was a test of self. At 40 minutes, the arena AI chimed softly. Final stage complete. Light flooded the corridor. The human blinked once as brightness returned. He did not flinch, did not gasp. He simply unfolded his legs and rose to his feet. His vitals showed fatigue. Muscle damage indicators were high. Thermal stress markers present. But his gaze was clear. He looked toward the observation deck, toward the instructors who had failed here, and for the first time since the demonstration began, he smiled faintly. One of the instructors found his voice. "What does this stage measure?" The human brushed dust from his sleeve. "It measures who you are," he said calmly. A pause. "When everything else is gone." The arena was silent again. But this silence felt different. He had not conquered the course. He had endured it. And somehow, that was more unsettling. The corridor doors slid open fully. The human stepped out of the arena. He was limping slightly now. Not dramatically. Just enough to remind everyone watching that he was not invincible. He was tired. His uniform was scorched at the sleeves. Fine frost residue still clung faintly to the seams. Microtremors flickered in his hands from accumulated strain. He looked human. Not mythic. Not engineered. Just human. And that was the part that unsettled them most. The Vral Warmaster descended from the observation platform and stopped a few meters away. For a moment, neither spoke. Then the towering instructor asked quietly, "You designed this alone?" The human shook his head. "No." A pause. "Earth designed it." Confusion rippled through the gathered delegates. The human gestured back toward the corridor. Gravity training, extreme climate exposure, isolation, endurance. None of that started with me. He met their eyes one by one. Our planet does this to us from birth. The coalition representatives shifted uneasily. Earth, a world of tectonic instability, violent storms, predator-dense ecosystems, extreme seasonal shifts, oceans deep enough to crush metal hulls. A death world. The human continued. We didn't design this course to show dominance. His breathing had nearly normalized now. We designed it because this is what war feels like. Silence thickened. He looked at the instructors who had failed the course. You trained to overpower environments. He tapped his chest lightly. We trained to survive them. A young cadet from the upper stands hesitantly raised a hand. The human glanced upward. Yes. If humans can endure that, the cadet asked carefully, why don't you rule the coalition? The question lingered. The instructors watched closely. The diplomats leaned forward. The human considered it for a long moment. Then he gave a small, almost amused exhale. Because endurance isn't the same as ambition. He adjusted his sleeve. Strength without restraint becomes destruction. Another pause. We don't train like this so we can conquer you. His voice remained calm. We train like this so we don't break when things go wrong. The Vral Warmaster studied him carefully. And if someone forces you to break? The human's expression didn't harden. It didn't need to. Then we endure longer than they expect. No threat. No boasting. Just fact. The holoscreen above the arena flickered. Text updated across the display. Course status. Verified. Classification updated. Human standard. Coalition advanced. A quiet murmur spread across the chamber. The trainers of empires had come to demonstrate superiority. Instead, they had witnessed something else. Not overwhelming power. Not advanced weaponry. Not biological perfection. Discipline. Adaptation. Restraint. The human turned toward the exit. Before stepping through, he paused. Without looking back, he added, "You don't build soldiers to win every battle. A beat. You build them to still be standing at the end." The doors closed behind him. No one spoke for several seconds. Then, slowly, the galaxy's elite instructors began taking notes.